Roughly 8 years ago, my mom and I decided to take a trip to New York. I had never been, and she had gone once when she was in her 20s. We thought this would be a fun vacation. Oh, how wrong we were. So, somehow, she got a hold of some free tickets to fly. If you've never flown standby, let me tell you, it is the worst. You are literally the last people to board the plane and the first to get bumped if it's full. Now, this story begins as we're flying out of our home state. We land in Maryland for a layover, only to discover the next leg of our trip had been canceled due to a fire in a New Jersey control tower. Apparently, New Jersey is a lot like New Mexico, in that the state will just randomly catch on fire if you look at it wrong. We put our heads together to figure out what we're gonna do. We come up with the idea of taking a train the rest of the way. I had some money in my account I had saved up for spending money once we got to the Big Apple. We walk a little ways to the train station, and I buy two tickets. Immediately, as I turn away from the ticket booth, I hear an overhead announcement that all train traffic had been halted. We found out later this was due to another train in the area hitting something. Without having to take a step, I turn back around and say to the ticket person, "I would like to return these tickets, please." They reply, "Okay, sure, no problem. However, the money will go back to the card and may take 3 to 5 days to process." Well, shit. As we're trying to figure out our next move, my mom goes off to ask some people about getting a cab. At the same time, I was a smoker, so I took this opportunity to have a cigarette. It's a disgusting habit, folks. Never start smoking. Anyway, I didn't like smoking in front of my mom, so I walked a little bit away from the crowd towards the train tracks. During this time, my mom loses sight of me and flips her shit. She starts panicking and telling everyone, I can't find my son." People start looking around for me, but the way she said it made it seem like I was a lost little boy, when in fact I was about 25 at the time. Eventually, she spots me and runs over, relief all over her face. And I noticed the people looking at me like, this was her little boy? That's a grown ass man. During that time, she was able to make a deal with this dude to split a cab with us the rest of the way. The guy she found was a well dressed, business looking guy who was willing to let us tag along with him for no cost, but we didn't want to feel like we owed some stranger, so we offered to pay half. He agreed. The cabbie even said he'd give us a deal of a flat rate for the trip, and also left the meter on so that we could see how much we had saved versus paying by the mile. I snapped this picture of the meter before we got out. Now, if I remember correctly, this was about a 4 hour cab ride, and we became temporary BFFs with our travel companion. My mom grilled him about all his sexual partners and the girl he was in love with, as well as plenty of unasked for relationship advice. He was a very fascinating guy. He had a house in LA and in New York. He frequently traveled back and forth. On this occasion, he was en route to his best friend's birthday party. At one point, he noticed I was wearing a Marilyn Manson shirt and goes, "So you like Marilyn Manson?" And I'm like, "Yeah?" And he's like, "Yeah, I know him. We party all the time when I'm in LA." And I'm thinking to myself, this dude is full of it. But to my surprise, he pulls out his phone and shows me picture after picture of him just hanging out with Marilyn Manson. And I was like, whoa, this dude is for real. He also idolized Patrick Bateman from American Psycho and kind of looked like him too. As tourists, we also asked him what felt like the need to know information. Before we left, my mom's sister told her, "Whatever you do, don't go into Hell's Kitchen." And we didn't know where that was. So she asked our travel buddy. He laughs and says, "Your hotel is in Hell's Kitchen." My mom and I both look at each other like, "Oh shit." And he continues, "Don't worry about it. It's a lot safer than it used to be in the 70s." We both kind of begrudgingly agree since we really didn't know any better. Our hotel ended up being just about a block or two away from Times Square, and the neighborhood it was in was absolutely lovely. Eventually, we get dropped off at our hotel and say our goodbyes and never see this bloke again. I often wonder about what wild adventures he's gotten up to since then. Now, at our hotel, we check in and had to beg to cancel our second night in order to have any money during the remainder of this trip, due to the fact that the train ride wouldn't be refunded for another few days. Reluctantly, they agreed, but that also meant we didn't have a place to stay on our second night. We were hoping we could get a hold of my mom's brother's best friend, who had an apartment in NYC. She had offered to let us stay there originally, but we didn't want to be a burden, so we declined. Now that our luck had shifted, we were fortunate to have the option available. Now, all we had to do was get in contact with her. Easier said than done. I'm really sorry to have to do this, but as I was editing the video, I realized how long it was getting. I'm going to have to break this up into a two-parter, so join me next week as I continue our saga of being stranded in New York. Like, comment, subscribe, yada yada yada. Be safe, and don't do anything I would do.